Hello, and this is episode 201, the Notcast. I can't believe we've got up to that number already. It is the 18th of May, 2022, which means that it's 30 years ago that, well, pretty much every record I ever owned came out. Very expensive year, 1992. Perhaps in some respects, not quite as momentous to me as 1991. And today I'm going to be talking about an album that I think legitimately changed my life. Now that's a phrase that people use very, very liberally. They say it too often. Oh, this album changed my life. No, this one genuinely did. Today I am talking about the Nine Inch Nails debut album released in 1989 in America and 1991 in the UK. Pretty Hate Machine, an album that was, it became a friend to me at the time, and I didn't have very many friends, and the friends I had weren't particularly good. Sorry, guys, you weren't. Um, and talking about the world that I lived in when this record came out, and when I started listening to this album. So way back in the midst of time, there used to be a show on MTV on Sunday nights called 120 Minutes that lasted for 120 minutes, including adverts, I'm afraid to say. And on that, they started broadcasting a video by a band called the Nine Inch Nails. And the Nine Inch Nails had done a video where there was rumours that the footage from the video shoot had been mistaken for footage from a snuff movie. And of course, that meant that 120 minutes, being the primitive version of an edgelord that they were, had to show it. And I watched the video and I was like, this sounds very different to everything else that I knew, but I loved it. And after that, um, I got sent a cassette of the album. I got, in the days when people had pen friends, when you'd write a letter and you'd send it in the post and you'd talk to somebody who you hadn't met and you'd just write each other letters and talk about things. These days, everyone just tweet bollocks. But in those days, you could tweet, and it was very long, and it was only to one person, and they were called letters. And I got talking to somebody who was in the NME of all places, and talking about industrial music and things like Depeche Mode and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, you know what, I could do with friends. I'll write to them, because all my friends were teenage metalheads, and the music, some of the music I really, really liked was very broad by their standards. So I like Pet Shop Boys and Iron Maiden and The Cure and Depeche Mode. And a band called Nights of Red that I'd seen on on the chart show. They showed a minute and a half of the Fun to Be Had video, and I was like, that's really good. And so I started getting into music like that, and I built my record collection up by borrowing LPs and not CDs. We couldn't afford CDs. CDs were £14, LPs were £6.99. Borrowing LPs and recording them onto 45-minute sides of music, 90-minute cassette tapes. So I got sent a cassette of this album by this band called Nine Inch Nails, which I'd only heard one song of. I thought was quite good. I put the album on, I pressed play, and my life changed in 44 and a half minutes. I say 44 and a half minutes because, as you probably know, Pretty Hate Machine is 47 minutes long. And that meant that the last minute and a half of the last song I never ever heard for about a year and a half, because I couldn't afford to get it. The album had only been released in America. The only copies you could get were imported from America. And that meant that there would be at least £20 for a CD. And I couldn't afford £20 for a CD. I was on £6 a week pocket money. No way could I afford 3 weeks pocket money for a CD. So yeah, these days, of course, obviously you go on Spotify and you hear the whole thing. But I didn't know. I thought Ring Finger just ended the way that it ended before the whole thing kind of came back. And bands were designing albums around one side of a 90-minute cassette at that point, depending on the brand of cassette that you bought. You get an extra few seconds in, and that can make all the difference, because the album might fit onto one side of a tape. But I listened to Pretty Hate Machine, and all of a sudden, I had a moment of revelation, much like Jake and Elwood Blues in the Blues Brothers, when the light comes through the church stained glass and it peels down upon him, and he goes, "Hallelujah, I have seen the light," and he floats into the air. There was life before Pretty Hate Machine, there was life after. and Life After was better and richer, and I felt a lot less alone. Now the strange thing is, this album, this is not the vinyl copy of Pretty Hate Machine, by the way, that I listened to repeatedly. This is one of the repressings that's come out a lot more recently. The version of Pretty Hate Machine, the version which I ordered from America, is here. This is the American CD issue of Pretty Hate Machine, first put into press in 1989 on the 20th of October 1989. I ordered it from, I think it was Highway 61 Records, I think, which was in the Bullring. They were the only place that had it on their catalogue, and it was £14.99. And the strange thing is that I got this probably in when I first started working, which was late 1990. I saved up my £1 an hour from my job, manual labour, and this album is 15 hours of my life on one CD in a box. Of course, thanks to the shysters who worked at PTO, it is now covered in pit marks and falling apart. Thanks, guys. You saved yourself a few quid there. But this is 15 hours of my life, and this is the CD that I ordered. Now, the strange thing is, this CD was pressed and manufactured in the UK, and then it was sent to America, and then it was sent back from America. It's a bizarre release. But Pretty Hate Machine changed my life. So I listened to it, and the whole album is, I think, to me, Trent Reznor, who is Nine Inch Nails, or at least was Nine Inch Nails at that point, was kind of like a white version of Prince. Now that sounds really strange when you think about it, but on the first 5 Prince albums, Prince played 27 instruments, and he had one guest musician play one instrument on one song. On this album, Trent Reznor played everything apart from one guitar tone at the end of Sanctified. It is a solo album in all but name. One man on his own in a studio, fueled by fury and ambition in the backwaters of America, cadging studio time and furiously trying to think his way out of the certain fate which otherwise befell him, which was to be a suburban nobody. And he got a job working as a gopher and general assistant at a place called Right Track Studios. And whenever the studios weren't occupied, he was in the studio learning his craft, understanding how to become who he always was. And he could play a lot of instruments. He could play guitar, saxophone, keyboards, vocals, bass, drums, samples. I don't know of an instrument he can't play. I mean, probably the zither or maybe the theremin. But aside from that, I don't know of an instrument that he can't play. And as a self-taught autodidact, he kind of built his own universe and created his own universe into the brand identity of Nine Inch Nails. He recorded a demo at Right Track Studios, which was published on a bootleg CD in 1994. Here it is, Purest Feeling, very readily available for you to find on the internet. This is an absolutely essential Nine Inch Nails release, by the way. It is the first Nine Inch Nails demo tape recorded in the spare time at the Right Track Studio, featuring most of the songs off the album. Doesn't have Terrible Lie on, doesn't have Sin, doesn't have Head Like a Hole, but it also has Sanctified, Maybe Just Once, The Only Time, Kinda I Want To, That's What I Get, Purest Feeling, Ring Finger and Down in It on there. So it's missing a few songs. And like many great bands, their first fludge of songs that they write aren't always the classics. And some of them, Maybe Just Once and Purest Feeling, are songs that are either never played live or never released. But what we had was a record by a band that appeared fully formed right from the off. They were a complete package. There was no embarrassing baby photos of them. That first album, like Pantera, when they kind of like quietly deleted and never let anybody get a copy of it ever again. Nine Inch Nails arrived as a fully formed, perfect object, realised, and carried on doing so. This demo tape led to an offer from a label called TVT, which, as I understand, was called TV Tunes, and specialised in, of all things, novelty records, TV soundtracks, and jingles. And this was their first stab at creating a serious album by a serious artist. Didn't quite work in their favour. Where I think this album, Pretty Hate Machine, and Nine Inch Nails' appeal differed from a lot of their contemporaries who didn't even know they were contemporaries. Bands like Nights Are Ebb, Front 242, Skinny Puppy, those type of things. The difference is in the songwriting. So there's three components I think that exist inside a band. One is the song. The second one is the meaning ascribed to that song. So some people they'll like bands, but they just like bands. They don't love bands, they like bands because it makes them feel happy and it makes them want to dance, you know. And there are bands like that that will never ever be anybody's favourite band. Then there are bands that have a meaning, and their music has a meaning to fans in a way that transcends logic and words. And you listen to it and you go, that's like somebody took the very thoughts out of my brain, thoughts I don't even know I've got, and made them real. And then the third part is sound, sonic, production, that type of thing. And for a great act, you need to have all three. You need to have the songs, you need to have the meaning, and you need to have the sound. And in my opinion, Pretty Hate Machine is one of the very best breakup albums of all time. If it was Trent Reznor on acoustic guitar, it would be like Blood on the Tracks. Or if it was with a soul funk backing, it would be like Marvin Gaye's Here My Dear. But it is a Pretty Hate Machine is an industrial album, which sounds like the roar of machines. But at the same point, what Pretty Hate Machine and Nine Inch Nails did, which some of their contemporaries didn't do, is that they injected emotion and feeling into the music. So much as I love Nights Are Ebb, much as I love Front 242, you don't listen to them and think that song would sound fantastic on an acoustic guitar. You don't listen to something like Joining the Chant or Master Hit, and you go, I really want to hear that with just him and a piano. It just doesn't work like that. That's not how the song works. It's a machine to engineer a form of physical release, dancing, and response in that way. But where Nine Inch Nails did it differently is that they wrote these incredible songs, and it's got some of the best songs that are ever written. Pretty Hate Machine. And then they kind of spot welded that to this immaculate production. I'm going to talk about the production first, which is that Nine Inch Nails, Pretty Hate Machine, much like This Is the Day, This Is the Hour, This Is This by Pop Police itself, Paul's Boutique by Beastie Boys, Liquidizer by Jesus Jones. These are all fabulous albums that were made at stretching the very limits of what technology was capable of. So for for a sampler, you might be able to get 8 seconds into a sampler. And so in order to stretch the capacity of that, for Pretty Hate Machine, one of the things Trent Reznor used to do is he used to sample at very low bit rates, and then he used to stretch it out so that it wouldn't sound recognisable anymore, and the inherent low quality of the sample rate would distort the song so that it no longer sounded like what it originally had been. So all of the snare drum sounds on Pretty Hate Machine are actually stolen off other records, but they're filtered, they're compressed, they're stretched, they're sampled in low bit rates, they're bent and distorted so they don't sound like it. Now you can hear, especially on Down In It, you can hear some of the tack head drum sounds from Keith LeBlanc, who also works on the production for the album. On some of the other ones, like for example, Something I Can Never Have, what you have in the bedrock of the song, the layering of the song, is a huge amount of ambient noise, which was used to sit underneath tracks by This Mortal Coil. And Trent had got This Mortal Coil's producer, or one of the people that was involved in the band, to work with him. And he went, here's a whole bunch of unused sounds from our album, and we will put those into Something I Can Never Have. The technology that he was using was an Emax, which had been filtered. It was using existing sounds and it was bending them around. So snare drum sounds, as I said, from Tackhead and Front 242 and Scritti Politti. He was also using a thing called a turbo synth, whatever one of those is, an Alchemy, the Prophet VS, and the Oberheim Expander, a very popular bit of kit that is on many hundreds of the CDs that sit behind me here. And the memory limitations he used as a virtue. So, for example, one of the tracks has a loop from Public Enemy on it. I don't know which one, which has actually been reversed. It's modulated, it's been stretched, and it's been bent out of shape. In much the same way, by the way, as the riff that's at the end and beginning of Closer from the Downward Spiral album is actually a Roxy Music track that's sped up by 68% and reversed. And when it came to playing these songs live, all the songs were rebuilt. New guitar parts were added, the drum parts were simplified, because the drum parts on the album, a human can't play some of those drum parts. So, for example, some of them when the band played live, the beat was and the drum parts were stripped down to the raw essentials, and you ended up with an album that was a perfect consolidation of or like an undiluted kind of concentrated version of all of Trent Reznor's influences. You can hear the Prince in this, in the slap bass of Sanctified, and also in some of the drum parts, which I will mention. You can hear the influence from 242, Skinny Puppy, Nights are Ebb. You can hear the songwriting of people like Bob Dylan. You can hear all of that in there if you know what you're looking for. And yet, like all great things, you can say, well, actually, no music is original, because music is a combination of notes, and all that you're doing is you're rearranging the same chord number of notes and chords, etc. And yet, somehow, with that core amount of root notes and sounds, somehow we've managed to create all the music that sits behind me, and all the music that sits behind me is less than 0.001% of all the music that's ever been played by anybody anywhere in the world. And Trent Reznor took all those influences and he combined them in a unique way to replay back his experience of reality into something that made sense for him. It's one of the greatest breakup LPs of all time, and I came to it before I'd had a relationship. But what I did have, I came to it when I was 16 years old. So as a 16-year-old in what felt like the armpit of a generally forgotten suburban industrial town, I felt that when I listened to this album and I listened to the lyrics, I was like, I saw a lot of myself in those. Margaret Thatcher, I haven't even made it 20 minutes without mentioning Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher implemented a course of managed decline for some of the cities in the UK in the 80s. Birmingham, where I grew up, felt like one of those cities, or at least parts of it. There were only 3 career options that were open to you. You worked at the car factory, the chocolate factory, or the HP sauce factory, or you went on the dole. That was it. The car factory has been demolished and turned into housing. The chocolate factory only has 11-month contracts. The HP sauce factory has been demolished. So as you can see, the managed decline has been successful and turned Birmingham and most of the UK into a service industry, an intellectual powerhouse, or whatever they say. But for me, as a 16-year-old on £6 pocket money a week, I felt very much like I was shut outside of the world which I could have participated in. This is the day before these are the days before the internet, before YouTube, Twitter, or anything like that. You needed money to access culture. That was the bottom line of it, and I had no money. So between us, we pulled, amongst our friends, one fantastic record collection, and we all just taped everything off everybody else, and somehow we survived. Which ties in with Jesus Jones' track Info Freako, is that there was just no end. I was like a human Johnny Five, constantly demanding more input. I needed to hear everything, and in that way I would be able to identify what it was. When I heard Pretty Hate Machine, I thought, there's somebody who... I didn't feel so alone after listening to this album. I felt very alone when I was 16 or 17, because I felt like, am I the only person that experiences reality in the way in which I experience it? Am I the only person that sees the sharp teeth of poverty and injustice? Am I the only person that understands the cruelty of financial penury, or the only person that really acutely felt the loneliness that came from not being able to have a relationship? I wasn't able to have a relationship because I went to an all-boys school. I was very, very shy. You may not believe that now, but I was staggeringly shy. I would blush when a woman would talk to me, or even about completely unrelated things, like, can you get out of the way, that type of thing. And Pretty Hate Machine felt like a friend when I really, really needed a friend. It articulated a lot of my thoughts and my feelings about the reality that I lived in as a 16-year-old that didn't fit into the world around him. I felt like a square peg in a round hole. I felt very much like the Mannix lyric from Faster, as if you stand up like a nail, you will be knocked down. I felt very much like I didn't fit in the world around me. And that comes into the opening lyric of the opening track, Head Like a Hole, played live by 9 Inch Nails to this day. It was the first 9 Inch Nails song I heard, Head Like a Hole, and it's still one of my favourites. And I kind of talk about Head Like a Hole in a more abstract fashion. But no, let's get the 7-inch single out. Here it is. And let's get the CD singles. and the other bit. So Head Like a Hole, it's no overstatement to say Head Like a Hole changed my life. It changed my worldview. And the lyrics were an articulate dissection of control and power and money and finance in a way that made me feel less alone in this world. A lot of the lyrics are around power and control and authority. And if you take the cue from Bono, who said that a lot of songs about love are songs about God, a lot of songs about God are also songs about love, because God is love. And there's lots of lyrics on the album Pretty Hate Machine that very, very clearly identify and address a power and authority. The word love is never mentioned, I think. It might have been mentioned on stage once, but it's not mentioned on this album at all. But the album is dripping with fury about unsatisfactory circumstances and relationships, right from the opening line: God, money, I'll do anything for you. God, money, just tell me what you want me to. Nail me up against the wall. You don't want everything, you want it all. And that relationship very, very clearly kind of points out the dichotomy around power and abuse and control, and how money is used as an instrument in order to. And I felt very much at the sharp end of poverty at that point. To me, happiness was having a record collection, um, and I felt very, very sharply the teeth of that. And so that song, and then you think, if you haven't got money, then you haven't got the ability. In a capitalist society, comrades, if you haven't got money, you haven't got the ability to have control, you haven't got agency, you become an object that is pushed around by people that do have money. People that have money have power and control over you. And all of the lyrics in Head Like a Hole are really around, wanting, I'd, I'd rather die than give you control. Bow down before the one you serve. You're going to get what you deserve. These are the lyrics which, to me, I really understood. It articulated to me very, very clearly, the cruelty of money, and the way in which money became power and became abuse. And there's a very specific line about let's go dancing on the backs of the bruised. And I felt that line was very, very clear around identifying this is what money does. Money is used as power and a tool to control and abuse and misuse people. And it became, I remember I asked for it at a student night at a nightclub, and it was like, that's enough of that after about halfway through to something considerably less furious. I was the only person on the dance floor. I think, what was it, Sector 5 in Leicester in 1991. God damn it, I had seen Nine Inch Nails live by that point, which was something I never expected I was going to do. So you go through the lyric for Head Like a Hole, and it's around, I'd rather die than give you control, black as your soul. And it's all around power and control, and I'd rather die than give you control, because if you don't have money, you don't have agency. And I felt very much that before my first relationship, when I had no money and no relationship, I felt very much that I had a head full of ideas, but I couldn't articulate them. I couldn't realize them because I didn't have money and I didn't have the ability to have agency. There's a concept of a thing called fuck you money, where somebody might go, right, so if I've got enough money to say fuck you and walk out of any situation, that is a power. And whilst I was never going to be quite as rude as to say that to people, I have always wanted that, to have the ability to remove myself from a situation that I can't control and don't like, because otherwise you're imprisoned, and nobody wants to be a prisoner to a situation or a set of circumstances. I saw Nine Inch Nails in 1991, and it was like an exorcism. Every song, I left that show a different person, because I had a lot of feelings that I couldn't have expressed, because we're British, because we're repressed, because of circumstances, because it's not the done thing. And I was able to let go of a lot at that show. The best gig I ever went to, actually, until 1998, and it's still in my top 5 now. The second track on the album is Terrible Lie. And again, every part of Terrible Lie is burned into me. I remember everything about it. It's a lyric of effectively, disappointment, and the lyric about the power and control that people use. So when somebody lies to you, sometimes they're they're obviously they're using it to get power and control over you, but also it's a flex. It's saying I'm smarter than you. I can work things out. I can deceive you, and you aren't smart enough to work that out. And again, as I was saying, the lyrics around God, God, money, I'll do anything for you. In terrible lights, hey God, why are you doing this to me? All of those lines in the album about God are addressed to power and control, which is set inside, a figurehead of religion, or God could be love. But this lyric about, hey God, why are you doing this to me? Am I not living up to what I'm supposed to be? Why am I seething with this animosity? I think you owe me a great big apology. And can this world really be as sad as it seems? There's a lot of lines in this album and in the songs which are around being trapped in circumstances and being imprisoned by money and power. There's the line about I'm all alone in this world you must despise. I believe the promises, your promises and lies. I mean, it's an incredible album that when I listened to it, I was like, I'm not alone in this world. I thought, is there something wrong with me? Because this is how I feel about the reality I live in. And then listening to the album, and I kind of thought, it's not me. Somebody else sees the things I see. Somebody else feels the things I feel. And that somebody else has been able to make a record. And that record is now in my house, and I'm able to listen to somebody, and it's like, although I wouldn't say that, I'm friends with anybody in the band, and I never have been, never will be. But the idea of a stranger you didn't know was able to go, you are not alone in this. I feel this too. It's incredibly powerful. It's very, very comforting, because I felt like, am I a broken person in a world where everyone else is happy, everyone else seems to have money, everyone else seems to be enjoying their life, and I wasn't. And then I listened to this and I went, it's not me that's broken. It's the world. It's the structure of society. It's capitalism. Viva la revolution, comrades, and everything that goes with it. And it made me feel a heck of a lot less alone at the time, and I felt very, very alone indeed. Now, track 3 from the album is the first single. It's the first commercially released Nine Inch Nails track in the world. It is Down In It. Here is the US CD single of Down In It that was released on the 15th of September 1989. Yes, ladies and jelly spoons, Pretty Hate Machine is an 80s album. It just doesn't feel like it. 3-track single. Skin, which is the standard 7-inch mix, and the Shred and Singe mixes, which have been remixed by Adrian Sherwood and Keith LeBlanc. Keith LeBlanc being of Tackhead, Adrian Sherwood of, I think, Onyu Sound. And when you listen to Down In It, you can hear the influences on Trent and why he wanted those people to work with him. You can hear the synth line from a track called Mechanical Moments by Tackhead. You can hear the drum parts of Einstein. You can hear the guitar riffs from Dig It by Skinny Puppy. It's all there. In fact, even on one of the remixes of the tracks, I went through and remixed the whole of the Pretty Hate Machine album, using the available mixes that have got the fractions of the other versions and performances and unique performances, and also the multi-tracks which have been on Rock Band. And it's been absolutely fascinating to hear the bits of the song you're not meant to hear on their own. And Down In It, not my favourite Nine Inch Nails song, because if I remember correctly, when I was at university, I did creative writing as one of my courses, and my lecturer said, you can write about anything you like for creative writing, but no suicides. I'm bored of reading about suicides. You have to be inventive. And Down In It felt very much like a song about suicide, about how you've been crushed and repressed, and the world had taught you that you were no good and very bad indeed. Now, the UK release of Down In It, here's a 12-inch, limited to 5,000 copies. This is number 517 in its original shrink wrap, and it also features, there's the 12-inch, but it also features a 9-inch nail stencil. Unfortunately, the two black parts here at the top have been lost to time and age, but this record is 32 years old, so you'll give me a pass for having lost a couple of parts on the way. In fact, I'm surprised even the rest of it hasn't fallen out. These things were not meant to last a third of a century. They were meant to be sold and discarded and forgotten about, like baked bean cans or copies of Life magazine. They were not meant to be archived forever. Nobody was thinking about what the future was going to look like when these records came out. And the Down in It EP in the UK. 6 tracks, features the Skin, Shred and Singe mixes of Down in It, but it also features the demo version of Down in It, the first 9 Inch Nails demo to be released, and it also features 2 remixes of Terrible Lie, being the sympathetic and empathetic mix. And the empathetic mix, by the way, is probably, it's not a standard 12-inch type remix. It's got clearer use of samples and vocals, less distortion. It's almost an alternative take of the same track. So very, very much recommended for you to listen to it if you get a chance. And no doubt there is a copy of that mix somewhere on YouTube. That's the 12-inch, number 517. Of course, CD singles were more popular. So the UK CD of Down in It, here it is. This one's number 1499. Again, features the same 6 tracks. Also manufactured by PDO in Preston, the money-grubbing shysters that had destroyed significant chunks of my early record collection. And this was, 6 hours of my life at £1 an hour doing manual labour, but it was worth every goddamn penny because I've loved this record every day of every year for the past 33 years or thereabouts. So we go on to Sanctified, track 4 on Pretty Hate Machine. The only 9 Inch Nails recorded track that has slap bass on it. What a terrible phrase that is. Hopefully one I will never ever use again. The album was reissued in 2010 with a different sleeve recreated by Rob Sheridan because the original artwork had been lost. And the reason that I didn't buy it in 2010 on double vinyl was twofold, and they all relate to the album track, Sanctified, track 4 here. The two things are, firstly, Sanctified fades into, and something I can never have fades out of, into each other. And on the vinyl version in 2010, the track splits are at different points, which means the crossfade between Sanctified and Something I Can Never Have is not on the 2010 vinyl edition, and therefore I will not own it. The second one is the version of Sanctified on the 2010 edition doesn't feature samples from the film Midnight Express, which you can hear on the original release. That's why I've stuck with this repressing of the 1989 album as originally conceived, configured and experienced by me and everybody else for 20 years. Sanctified is a good track. Trent says it's about a man in a relationship with a crack pipe, which I think is a little harsh actually, but that's not completely unrealistic. All of the songs kind of frame power and control about people's relationships, and not necessarily relationships to other human beings, but relationships to money, in relationships to power, in relation to pleasure, in relation to the crack pipe, as it is. And there's a line in here: I still dream of lips I never should have kissed. And I heard this album before I had a relationship. I listened to this album a heck of a lot after that relationship came to an end. I dreamed of lips that I should never have kissed, because my life would have been a heck of a lot better if that relationship hadn't happened, and I think their life would have been a heck of a lot better. And in the interest of full transparency, it is my story to tell, and I will not hide from telling it. Is my first relationship came to a close when the other person in that relationship cheated on me with somebody I was very close to, and obviously we were all young and stupid, and boy did some people show that they were young and stupid at the time, but it was a betrayal, and it is one that has been very, very damaging. I knew me and her weren't going to grow old together and have children. That wasn't that kind of relationship, and it wasn't that kind of relationship from the first few minutes. It became obvious that wasn't what it was going to be, but it didn't need to be what it turned out to be, which was a betrayal. The two people responsible know who they are, and they know how I feel about it. It was very, very painful indeed. And so when that split happened, I listened to this album a heck of a lot because I'm like, it felt like these songs are new and experienced. I was really angry about it, and understandably angry about it, because there are lines that shouldn't be crossed. And that was one of the lines that was most definitely crossed. To quote the great Joey Tribbiani and Friends, they went so far beyond the line they couldn't even see the line anymore. And the track 5, Something I Can Never Have, also available in a remixed and extended form on the Natural Born Killer soundtrack from 1994. A song that I've only seen Nine Inch Nails play live once. They didn't play it when I saw them in 1991 because somebody somewhere had unplugged something and they couldn't play the song. I don't know who. They didn't play Ring Finger, which was on the set list. They didn't play Sanctified. In fact, the first time I saw them, I'll show you the bootleg tape in a minute. And then we go to the line about, in a place it seems like such a shame, though it all looks different now. I know it's still the same. Everywhere I look, you're all I see. Just a fading fucking reminder of who I used to be. And I mean, this album, I mean, if you want to know what it was like to be me in 1991, this is the album to listen to. It is all of my feelings in 1991. It's fair to say I was an intense little puppy, but I had a heck of a lot to be intense about. And if I could do one thing, I would go back in time. If I could go back in time and do one thing, I would go back in time and I would look after that dude, because he was a nice guy, and people did not nice things to him, and I grew up to be who I am now because of those events that happened. We go to side 2, moving swiftly on, ladies and jelly spoons, to Kinda I Want To. Again, a song that Trent doesn't like, I think, and doesn't play very often. In fact, I don't think he's played it since 1989. Now, the interesting thing about Kind of I Want To, alongside That's What I Get, which is track 8, is that they go into the same set of preset sounds. So there's elements of the synth parts from Down In It and the guitar parts. In fact, on my remix of Down In It, I've spliced in that section from Kinda I Want To, and it fits perfectly, and you wouldn't know that it wasn't part of Down In It. It is basically part of Down In It that's slotted inside another song. And That's What I Get also does roughly the same thing, because it uses similar noises to Down In It. It uses the the synth noises and some of the drum parts and some of the guitar sounds as well. So you can kind of go, right, that's how they work. Track 7 is Sin. Oh, I fucking love Sin. It's an incredible song, and it is so very, very difficult to talk about Sin in any meaningful way. But hell, I'm going to go with it. Let's see where we go with this. So here is the US CD single for Sin, designed, by the way, by the Designers Republic in Sheffield. And the Designers Republic did the cover art for acts like Age of Chance, Pop Will Eat Itself, The Orb, people like that. They're fabulous at design. And then, in fact, there was a woman that I worked with that had the tattoo of this NIN logo, which was only used on this release. This is the US CD single of Sin. Very expensive to import, so this was 7 hours of my manual labour and time to get these 3 tracks, these remixes. Sin on the single is completely different to the version on the LP. And by the way, here's the UK 9-inch single of Sin. The UK editions of Sin came in a black sleeve, so gloss and matte there, and back to the same tracks, but in different configurations and formats. For a long time, you could only get Sin as a US 12-inch or as a CD. So when it finally came out in the UK, which was after the tour, I bought the 9-inch single. In fact, let's have a look at the 9-inch single, because it's backed with the long mix of Sin and the dub mix and a cover of Queen's Get Down, Make Love, which is a bizarre choice, but so be it. But as you will later find out when I talk about Head Like a Hole, Trent was a significantly big fan of Queen. He remixed Stone Cold Crazy by Queen for the Hollywood Records reissues. And he also actually sampled Body Language by Queen on the 12-inch mix of, I think it is Head Like a Hole, actually. There's a drum loop that goes from 3 minutes 4 to 3 minutes 7 on that, which you can hear at the end of the 12-inch version of Head Like a Hole. And Sin is an incredible song, and it was massively remixed and overdubbed for the single release. The guitar parts were added, new sounds were added to the whole thing, and I've done a remix of Sin. It's really bloody difficult to do, but it's a great song, and there's lots of extra parts on it, which are now in the live versions, which are only on the single mix. Strongly recommend Sin. So, I'm well aware I'm running out of time. I haven't even got to half of the album yet. So let's go for track 8, which is That's What I Get. And there's a line about just when everything was making sense, you took away all my self-confidence. Now that what I'm hearing must be true, I guess I'm not the only boy for you. Wow, that's my first relationship in one go. It really is. And I can't really talk about it in any more detail than that. That's what it was, really. And then there's The Only Time and Ring Finger. I swear. Yeah. By the way, I should have mentioned Sin as a song. By the way, ties into the themes that we've got in the rest of the album about God, money, power, and control. Because obviously the concept of sin is that if something is ungodly, it is sinful, and sin and sex is a sin. But there's also a line in it around, stale incense, old sweat, and lies, 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 which comes from a Clive Barker book. I think it's the Book of Blood, where he described an old church. So this is where sin kind of ties in with the other songs on the album around God and control and money and power and relationships. And yeah, what else can I say about it? I mean, I'm inarticulate about how important this album is to me. It changed me. It was a friend when I needed it to be a friend, and it helped me through some very, very dark nights of my life when I was younger, and still today. In fact, I've listened to it several times this week. It's an incredible album, and I know it inside out. The last track on the album is Ring Finger, which I've never seen the band perform live. It was on the set list for the Birmingham show. Somebody somewhere unplugged something, and they didn't play it. Ring Finger, I think, ties up a lot of the lyrical themes that we've got throughout the rest of the album. The idea is that when you get married, you like what you see, you put a ring on it, that's your ring finger. It's a song about commitment, and it's a song around how that's not working, and how the relationship that you've got is perhaps broken and very difficult. About sacrifice and control. So it's probably a therapist's dream, this album, because of what the lyrics on the album are all about, but I'm not really sure. So I've mentioned the Down In It single, I've mentioned Sin. What I haven't mentioned is, in any great detail, and I almost definitely should, is the Head Like a Hole single, which was the first second UK single that was released on the 2nd of September 1991. If you're a fan of Nine Inch Nails, this has some absolutely essential remixes on it. Very quickly going to talk about the copper mix of it, which features a sample from Queen's Body Language, and also, by the way, the best Nine Inch Nails remix you have almost definitely not heard is on this CD single of Head Like a Hole. It is the Opal mix that was redone in late 1990. The Opal mix is a completely different recording of Head Like a Hole. It samples Tambourine by Prince and Release It by Time. Release It, taken from the soundtrack to Prince's Graffiti Bridge, Ladies and Jelly Spoons. And I think also one of the tracks on the album features the drum parts from Alphabet Street as well by Prince on there. And the Opal mix is a definitive and incredible re-recording of the track. It's got different lyrics, different vocals, different arrangement. It's just an incredible remix of the song. In the UK, there was a 12-inch, but also there was, of course, the standard, because the band's called Nine Inch Nails, right? You've got to have the 9-inch single. So here is my second 9-inch single that I have. Head Like a Hole comes in a poster sleeve with a very, very bizarre picture, which also, by the way, appears on the poster. So the poster, this is some dark stuff, but it really sums up all of the themes and concepts inside the album. They're of some kind of twisted and broken form of religion, and yeah, that's a really dark photograph. So the last thing which happened is I saw Nine Inch Nails. I saw them at Birmingham Goldwins, and I saw them in 1991 on I think the third from last show. They played 2 more shows after that. Here is my ticket: Nine Inch Nails, Birmingham Goldwins, £6. Ticket number 53. £6, very, very, very well spent. That show was incredible. As I said before, it felt like an exorcism because it felt like all the feelings that I've been grasping with and struggling with, the betrayal, the control and power which had been shown by money, the betrayal of the relationship which I'd had and everything. I just left it all out there on the floor, and I came out of that show and I was like, I was a different person. Um, it it just let me just lose my mind, and everything else went away. And that's what the best music does. It makes all the other stuff go away. It makes, power and health and money and everything disappear, and the only thing that exists really is the feeling and the song. And that in itself is an incredible experience. And they opened with Now I Am Nothing, a still unreleased song, and which contains, I think, lyrical greatest hits from a number of the ones. Here's the bootleg tape of it, by the way. In fact, I'm going to show to you that the bootleg tape has, you got the track names wrong. Look, Tear the Light, Under My Skin, Stuck in You, Something Real, which is Wish. The first time I heard Wish, Nine Inch Nails were playing it 6 inches away from my face. Used to Be Somebody, which is down in it. Incredible album. Pretty Hate Machine changed my life, and I came out of it a better person. I can't explain it any better than that. This is a phenomenal album that changed my life, and when I had nothing to look forward to, this album was a friend in the corner telling me that I wasn't alone, that everything was going to be okay, and that whatever it was, I was going to survive it. I really was. One of the most meaningful albums in my life. It really, genuinely is. And if you've watched all of this video, thanks for putting up with me talk about it for 46 minutes. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you soon. I've still got so much more to say about the album, but I've run out of time. Like Max Katana says in the Star Wars movie, that is a tale for another time. It's not sloppy plotting, I've just run out of time.